He's been called the Prince of Darkness, the Master of Spin, and the Godfather of New Labour. Personally, I think more appropriate titles might have included terms like hustler and gold digger. He's proven over and over again to be a man obsessed with money, power, and luxury. And in search of these things, he appears reflexively conditioned to always bend the knee and kiss the ring of rich and powerful men. Let's look at the 4 scandals which define his political career. What is the common factor? Spoiler alert, it's rich and powerful men with Mandelson on his knees licking their proverbial boots. In the 1990s, alongside Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, he was a key architect of New Labour. He was hyped as the ultimate political strategist, a communications genius who had been instrumental in rebranding the Labour Party and delivering that landslide victory in 1997. As Trade and Industry Secretary, he was at the heart of government, but in 1998, just a year into the new government, the first scandal hit. So who was the rich and powerful man Petey was fawning over? Well, it was a multimillionaire MP, Geoffrey Robinson, and we know exactly how much the cash sum involved in this relationship was. £373,000. To cut a long story short, this is the amount Mandelson borrowed from his multi-millionaire chum to help him pay for a swanky, upmarket Notting Hill house. Ah yes, only the best for our Petey. Problem was, multi-millionaire chum and fellow MP, Geoffrey Robinson, was under investigation in respect to some dodgy-looking business affairs. And who do you think was doing the investigation? Well, blow me, if it wasn't Peter Mandelson's own department. I mean, obviously no conflict of interest there, no whiff of sleaze or possible corruption. Surprisingly, just about everybody else in the country thought otherwise. On December 23rd, 1998, just days after the story broke, Peter Mandelson was forced to resign. It became known as the Geoffrey Robinson Home Loan Scandal. Most politicians would have faded into obscurity, but not Mandelson. In a testament to his bond with Tony Blair, he was brought back into the cabinet in 1999 as Northern Ireland Secretary. He survived. He was back on the front bench. But then, in 2001, scandal struck again. And who was the rich and powerful man at the heart of this scandal? Well, there was actually two. Two brothers, as it happens. Multi-millionaire brothers, of course. And the sum of money involved in this transaction, £1 million, no less. The accusation here is that Peter Mandelson was heavily involved in overseeing the building of the London Dome, an undertaking that had become a personal vanity project for Mandelson as Minister of the Dome. His ego and reputation was deeply invested in its success, but it had run into a series of problems and desperately needed an injection of cash. The Hinduja brothers were wealthy Indian-born businessmen who wanted British passports. The brothers donated £1 million to the Millennium Dome. The Observer explains it thus. Peter Mandelson helped a controversial Indian tycoon who is currently facing corruption charges to obtain British citizenship after he and his brother agreed to donate £1 million to bail out the Millennium Dome in what was last night being called a passport for favours scandal. The Observer can reveal that Mandelson approached the Home Office to find out whether an application from Srinand Hinduja, who had already been turned down for a British passport, would be welcomed. Hinduja duly applied in March 1999 and received his passport 6 months later, a third of the time a typical decision takes. The allegation is that Mandelson, as Minister for the Dome, improperly lobbied the Home Office to fast-track their application. So, Mandelson wants funding for his pet project, and coincidentally, a multimillionaire Indian businessman looking for a British passport donates £1 million to said project, and coincidentally, Peter Mandelson contacts the Home Office about this passport, and miraculously, it's rushed through the system. Nothing dodgy there at all, obviously. Not a hint of it. How could anybody possibly think there was anything going on there? Well, surprise, surprise, most people thought it actually was a bit dodgy. On January 24th, 2001, just over 2 years after his comeback, Peter Mandelson resigned from the cabinet for a second time. You might have thought that was it for Petey, twice resigning in disgrace. But no, our Petey wasn't finished trading favours with rich and powerful men. Mandelson's links to Blair and the Labour hard right apparently gave him a free pass, no matter how poorly judged his past behaviour. Unbelievably, Mandelson was appointed Britain's European Commissioner in 2004, a role that took him out of the domestic firing line and gave him significant international power over trade policy. And then in 2008, in another stunning political resurrection, Gordon Brown, who should have known better, brought him back from Brussels to serve as business secretary. So there he was back in the UK cabinet. But within a year, another scandal emerged with another, surprise, surprise, rich and powerful man at the heart of the story, a Russian oligarch and a very, very luxurious yacht. The story revolves around Mandelson's relationship with Russian aluminium tycoon Oleg Deripaska. The controversy erupted when it emerged that Mandelson had been a guest on Deripaska's super yacht in Corfu. The Guardian reported Lord Mandelson was forced to issue a fresh denial yesterday that he granted favours to the Russian aluminium magnate Oleg Deripaska while he was European Trade Commissioner. The business secretary flew to Moscow to start a 4-day official visit as it emerged that only a month after he accepted hospitality on Deripaska's £80 million yacht, he advocated the removal of trade restrictions which hinder the oligarch's aluminium business, Rusal. The Independent further expanded. The row centred on calls for a fresh investigation into his part in a controversial decision that exempted his friend's aluminium company from trade tariffs. The now business secretary and the Russian businessman were introduced several years ago by a mutual friend, Nat Rothschild. Their friendship was cemented over dinners in Moscow since 2004, and the closeness of the two men was highlighted when Lord Mandelson, 56, holidayed on Mr. Deripaska's luxury yacht off Corfu last year. So, here we have a senior British politician cozying up to a controversial oligarch on a floating palace where the potential conflict of interest was absolutely clear for all to see. Further evidence of Mandelson as a man so enthralled by the company of super rich men that common sense is just thrown out the window. But when it comes to Mandelson's obsession with powerful rich men, the best was yet to come. Future political historians will scratch their heads in bewilderment as to why. Why did Keir Starmer decide to appoint Peter Mandelson as UK ambassador to the United States? I mean, to most people, Mandelson was nothing more than a scandal-ridden relic of a bygone era, the Blair era, to be precise. But therein lies the answer. The Blair cultists have regained control of the Labour Party. Blair, of course, stands as the godhead of the cult, and Peter Mandelson is its high priest. And what Peter wants, Peter gets, and Peter clearly wanted this plum job very, very badly. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you'll be amazed to learn that it's a scandal centering on a very rich and very powerful man called Jeffrey Epstein. Forget the previous scandals over the years, even just the known details of Mandelson's prior relationship with this convicted paedophile should have been sufficient to block Mandelson's appointment. However, a release of emails last month makes it clear just how close that relationship between Mandelson and Epstein was, and that it continued even after Epstein's conviction. The BBC tells us Mandelson was asked to leave his post on Thursday after a now notorious cache of emails was reported by Bloomberg on Wednesday evening. These include supportive messages Mandelson sent after Epstein had pled guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor in June 2008. In one message, Mandelson is reported to have told Epstein to fight for early release, and the day before he began his prison sentence, which read, "I think the world of you."
Did you tell Keir Starmer everything about the nature of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Was there full disclosure about your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein before you were appointed ambassador? Did you tell Keir Starmer everything? Did you leave anything out? So can you clear up for us? How many times did you visit Jeffrey Epstein? How many times did you visit him, sir? Sir, who are the friends you referred to in your birthday message to Epstein in his birthday book? So are you going to release all the correspondence between you and Jeffrey Epstein? Lord Mandelson, these are important matters, sir. Are you going to release the correspondence? Was Keir Starmer aware?
Really didn't want to say anything, did he? Let's speak to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's with me. And John, definitely very tight-lipped.
Well, Mandy, as we call him, although he always said that was homophobic. Mandelson, the Prince of Darkness, the supreme great spin doctor, how not to conduct a doorstep. If you're doorstepped by the likes of you and me, be polite, say good evening, be friendly, and then say, thank you very much, but I really haven't got anything to add to what I've said previously, blah, blah, blah. Be nice. He looks furtive, he looks shifty. And talk about how the mighty have fallen. I mean, he got into a car which had the engine sounded a bit croaky, didn't it? And, he's used to being driven around in limos. He used to be, not that long ago, he was in the White House with Donald Trump. He's the man who likes the high life, the oligarchs, yachts, all that sort of stuff. And there he is, looking shifty and furtive at a provincial railway station like some sort of fugitive.
So, what's the through line? What connects the home loan scandal, the passport affair, the oligarch's yacht, and the Epstein scandal? It's clear that each case involved a man with money and power, and that each and every one of these men had ethical and/or criminal questions to answer. But it seems Mandelson was so besotted by these men's wealth and power that he was blind to everything else, including how his obsequious and supine behaviour towards them would register with me, you, and everybody else on the face of the planet. Now, it's important to note that Mandelson isn't the only UK politician guilty of questionable relationships with obscenely rich men. Boris Johnson had his very own Russian oligarch, Evgeny Lebedev. This close friend of Putin showered Johnston with gifts and hospitality and stays at villas and was rewarded with a seat in the House of Lords. I mean, it's about a blatant example of corruption as you could think of. Keir Starmer, let's not forget, also seems to have found himself a sugar daddy in the form of Lord Ali. The Guardian tells us that Keir Starmer has declared more free tickets and gifts than any other major party leader in recent times, with his total now topping £100,000 after recent support for his lifestyle from Labour donor Wahid Ali. But it's Mandelson who remains the extreme example of politicians pimping themselves out to rich and powerful men. This is the man who told us, "I work every single day in some small way to bring forward the end of his," Jeremy Corbyn, tenure in office. Something, however small it may be, an email, a phone call, or a meeting. Every day I try to do something to save the Labour Party from his leadership. Goodness, it's amazing he found the time to do anything against Corbyn between courting the favour of dodgy multimillionaire businessmen and writing supportive missives to convicted paedophiles. But there are other UK politicians who are also tainted by Mandelson's most recent and most spectacular disgrace. Here is Mandelson with his arm around Dame Margaret Hodge. Hodge, of course, was another one devoted to destroying the jam-making, lifelong anti-racist campaigner Jeremy Corbyn. Now, she's had plenty to say about the Nons, previously known as Prince Andrew, and his relationship with Epstein. The Observer tells us, stripped of his title, Andrew faces calls to testify to US committee over Epstein links. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is under mounting pressure to give evidence about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein to a US congressional committee after being stripped of all his titles by the King. Labour peer Margaret Hodge, who is the Prime Minister's anti-corruption champion, said giving evidence to the panel was morally the right thing to do. Strangely, she's been silent on whether her best bud, Mandelson, should do likewise. And then we have Little Wes and his Uncle Petey. Here they are campaigning in the 2019 general election. Apparently, in his eyes, Wes's eyes, Mandelson is a legend, no less. Wee Wes, it is said, sees Petey as a sort of mentor when it comes to his political career. In fact, right up to the day before Starmer sacked him, Wes was still defending his idol. We can only wonder what lessons little Wes has learnt at the feet of his master. Judging by the amount of cash our Secretary of State for Health and Social Care has been gobbling up from private health companies, I think we can presume Wes is a quick study. But it is Keir Starmer who should suffer the real reputational damage here. Once again, his judgment is called into doubt. The man and the hardcore Blairite cultists pulling his strings have been a disaster for both the Labour Party and the country. The Mandelson debacle is yet another nail in Starmer's coffin. If the Labour Party has any chance of survival, then both Starmer and the hard-right mob he leads has to go, and go soon. Thanks very much for watching. Please do help support left-wing media on social media by subscribing and liking the video and commenting, and we'll chat again soon.